Achenu kol beit Yisrael, our family, the whole house of Israel who are in distress or in captivity, who abide either on the sea or on dry land. May the all-present have mercy on them and take them out from narrowness to expanse and from darkness to light, from oppression to redemption, now, swiftly, and soon. This prayer, dating back at least to the medieval period, is our tradition's plea for the release of those held captive or those in distress. And Jews have been offering it for centuries, and certainly for the last 10 months, perhaps for themselves, but primarily, of course, for the hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. It begins by noting that we Jews are all one family, wherever we live, achim, brethren. For so many of us, the challenges of this past year have reminded us of that, and in particular for diaspora Jews, the year has strengthened our connection to our people in the land of Israel, who constitute half of world Jewry. And it has reaffirmed our commitment to the state of Israel as a source of strength and security for Jews wherever we live. In that spirit, we are honored to welcome this morning IDF Reserve Captain Zoe Marks, now the Director of Overseas Operations for Yatar Israel, a division of the IDF serving on Israel's periphery where the tragedies of the past 10 months have unfolded. Yatar's task is to try to intercept terrorist attacks before they occur, and Captain Marks will explain how. Zoe, a former officer and active reservist, served with distinction in the IDF. She joined Yatar last year, and she's come to share with us her story since October 7th, to speak about this elite unit she serves, and about life on Israel's periphery in the north and the south, where so many Israelis are still unable to live, refugees in their own country. So would you please join me in welcoming Captain Zoe Marks.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you for all the team for inviting me here today and for you guys coming out to let me speak, and to everyone also, of course, joining online. My name is Captain Zoe Marks. I was born and raised in Israel to parents who made Aliyah from London, and I have 3 older brothers. At the age of 18, of course, like every other Israeli, it's mandatory to join the military. So did my 3 older brothers, all served for 3 years each in different locations, different positions, and different units. When I turned 18, I, of course, joined as well, and was very honored and excited to be able to start that chapter in my life. And halfway through my service, I was picked to go to officer school, and that's where I had the honor to become an officer in the IDF and extending my time in the army. For girls, I'm not sure if you're familiar with, girls are required to do only 2 years, boys are required to do 3 years, and I decided to extend my time to 3 years. After my service in the IDF, I decided that I would still like to pursue the security of Israel. So I started working for security for El Al Airlines, the Israeli airline. And I worked in a lot of different locations, including a few in the US, around Germany, and also in Dubai. I started my position with Yatar last September, 11 months ago. And I got to learn this new unit that I had no idea that even was around when I was in the army myself, and fell in love right away. I was approached by the commanding officer of the unit to come join the unit and be the representative around Israel and also around the US and the rest of the world. Back in September, I had spent time in the unit, with the unit in Israel, and I got to know how the unit operates, where we operate, and all about it, which I'll tell you also as well. I'd like to take you to October 5th, just a couple days before that horrific day of October 7th. October 5th was a Thursday, and it was the end of a week I had spent on the Gaza border training with members of Yatar, our unit, getting to know the operation specifically on the Gaza border, learning their location, getting to know these people. And I was assigned to be specifically with 2 men named Arik and Ilan. Arik was a security director of Kibbutz Be'eri, and Ilan was a security director of Kibbutz Nachal Oz, both kibbutzim right on the border of Gaza and Israel. On that Thursday, we concluded our week. We had great fun. We got to learn each other. We went on these amazing operations on the Gaza border, and it was truly an incredible week. And I ended that Thursday heading up to the north with friends, and ironically, as it turns out, friends from my army service. We headed up to the north to spend the weekend, and then October 7th on Saturday, we all woke up to our phones buzzing. It was a day that we'll never forget, how we were affected by the news that we saw. Getting messages from our own friends in the Nova Festival asking us to send police, seeing footage of Hamas terrorists attacking our people in our cities of Israel in their own homes, terrorizing these communities, destroying families, tearing people apart. It was truly a horrific morning and a day for everyone that none of us will ever forget. But on that day, we all immediately understood that this is different. So me and my friends packed our stuff from our weekend away, drove back to get our gear, put our uniforms on, and head out to our base. Now, during my time in the army, I had served in Gush Etzion, so I was called to go back to Gush Etzion too. For those of you who don't know, Gush Etzion is in Judea and Samaria. That afternoon, I arrived at my base. Being in the north, it took me a few hours to arrive, and the base was already swarming with thousands of soldiers, just waiting to get the okay, to get their weapon, to get their uniform, to get anything they need to go fight for their country. By nightfall, over 300,000 reserve soldiers were already set and sent to go fight for our country. Now, on that night of October 7th, at about 11:30 p.m., I had received a phone call from my commanding officer letting me know that both Ilan and Arik, the two men I had spent the week prior with, they had died and were killed by Hamas terrorists, protecting their hometowns, protecting their families. A few days later, we had come to know that on the morning of October 7th, when the rockets started firing, in Kibbutz Nachal Oz, there was a child called Ariel, and he was out on a jog at 6:30 in the morning. Ariel was pulled by this man who realized that the sirens that were going off were more than usual and the situation was more dangerous. That man put Ariel in his home with his wife and 3 daughters in order to save his life and try and protect him. That man who saved Ariel was Ilan, also the man that I spent the week beforehand, and was killed later that day on October 7th. These 2 men, Ilan and Arik, were part of the Yatar team, and they were the security directors of their kibbutzim. They dedicated their lives to do what they can, and I'm glad to be able to be here today to speak on behalf of my unit and behalf of them who sacrificed the ultimate sacrifice for us to be here today. I'd like to take you back a few years to where Yatar started and what we do in Yatar. Yatar, I'll start with the name, is an acronym in Hebrew for Yechidat Taktit Rechuva, meaning Tactical Vehicle Unit. Back in 2016, Israel saw a year of many terrorist attacks, and specifically along the borders of Israel, the south and north, and mainly in Judea and Samaria. 2 of those attacks that had a great impact on the original Yatar team were the murders of 2 mothers with 11 children between them, just trying to do their regular chores or home or errands, and they ended up being both killed by 16-year-old terrorists who brutalized them in front of their own families. Those 2 attacks specifically impacted the original Yatar team, who all of them either lived or served of the borders of Israel, to come up with a solution of these ATVs and to the response to these incidents. Now, the solution that they came up with is using these ATVs. Now, an ATV, some of you might have ridden one before for fun. These vehicles are meant for difficult terrain, and they realized, this team, that we can utilize these ATVs to be able to prevent incidents from happening, to be able to respond fast, and to be able to provide any first response medical care. We decided that we're going to use these ATVs, and in 2017, just a few months later after this attack, the first ATV went to work, and then the results just showed for themselves. We use these ATVs all across the borders of Israel, and we focus on the periphery just because those areas that we have with our neighbors, the land is very tough. Now, the typical IDF armored vehicles are amazing. They're very heavy, they're armored, they protect the soldiers inside them, but unfortunately, they cannot go off-road, and they can't get to every single location. So this is where our ATVs come in, and we take them into these combat roles, and we are able to fill in the gap of the speed that is required in order to get to these locations of these incidents in time. We use these ATVs in order to respond to many different incidents. If it's terrorists trying to attack our Israeli civilians, if it's infiltrators just trying to cross the border for any reason, smugglers trying to bring in weapons into the wrong hands, and of course, like I said before, we also use them to provide first response medical care, because we all know that when it comes to saving lives, every minute counts and every second counts, and that's what we're there for. Now, these ATVs, they're completely open, they are unprotected, and so every soldier that we have sitting inside them is actually risking their lives in order to be able to use this ATV and to save others. Now, up until 2016-17, when we began, there was no protocol in the IDF to even use these vehicles in combat roles, but the sooner that we started, the results just spoke for themselves, and we were able to prevent and save lives, which is the ultimate goal. Now, up until the war, we were focusing truly on the borders of Israel. Again, if it's the Egyptian and Jordanian borders, if it's Gaza border that we've been operating beforehand and now, which I'll elaborate also in a second, all across Judea and Samaria, and up in the north on the Lebanese and Syrian borders. Now, Israel, I'm sure you know, is a tiny, tiny country, but we have hundreds of miles of borders that we need to be able to protect. Now, who rides these ATVs? All of our soldiers in our unit, we're a very small unit of about 80 soldiers, when a typical IDF unit is about 500-600. We have soldiers who are all of them fulfilled full IDF services, and also specifically in the elite units of the IDF. So they decide to join us as reservists in order to fight with our unit. We train our soldiers, they are qualified to be on these ATVs and to be able to utilize them in these combat roles. Excuse me. Now, when October 7th came, new challenges came with it. It wasn't just protecting all of our borders as we knew it before, it was also facing the war that was happening inside Gaza. We knew that we had to adjust as well as a small unit in order to be able to provide what we know we can with our vehicles. So, right away after the war began, we realized we can utilize these ATVs for evacuation of wounded soldiers and insertion of special forces. So we've decided to retrofit some of our ATVs and place a platform in the back, and by that have space for 2 stretchers for 2 wounded soldiers. We're living in a reality right now that currently 302 days at war, where almost every day we have soldiers being injured on the battlefield, and we are very proud that we are able to at least try and do what we can to save their lives. Since we've been starting doing that, we've saved over 197 lives of wounded soldiers. Now, how we do it is we are able to reach again with these ATVs to these locations that a typical helicopter or vehicle cannot reach, and bring them out and do it very successfully. I would share with you also an incident that happened just a few weeks ago. A Hamas sniper shot at several IDF soldiers, killing 2 on the spot and leaving 6 injured. We were part of the operation of rescuing those 6 soldiers, and we managed to rescue them successfully and keep them alive. One of the soldiers we've been in touch with, and he's very thankful to Yatar, and he's now in rehabilitation after spending a couple of weeks sedated, but now he's up and alive, and he's very happy to be able to hear about his evacuation on our vehicles. Now, we've been doing this non-stop, but we're also a very small unit that's trying to expand. Currently, the situation is in Israel that I can tell you from my unit's perspective is that up in the north, it's been very intense since October 8th. It's not stopped since, but it's only been escalating on a daily basis. Right now, a lot of the forces in the IDF, including Yatar, have been having to expand the teams that they have up in the north in order to prepare for a large attack from Hezbollah, who we all know who's been threatening us non-stop since the start of the war. In Yatar, we've been asked to send some of our vehicles and several of our soldiers up to the Lebanese border, and by that even taking away from teams that we have on different borders, just so we can have protected over there. It's very hard currently all across the borders of Israel on the periphery. A lot of people have been evacuated from their homes. A lot of people's income has been destroyed. Up in the north, I have a friend whose family is relying on farms, and they've all been burned down by these drones and missiles coming from Hezbollah. But we are going to be up in the northern border, again, Yatar, to protect anyone that we can and to fight off the enemy. Now, in Yatar, we are always looking for any supporters who might want to be involved with us and also would like to get updates about how we operate and what we do. And I'd love to be able to share with you guys more. I won't take much more of the time up here today, but I have left in the back some contact sheets and also flyers with more information about us. I'd love to be able to create a bond with each and every one of you. So if you'd like, please fill in your information before you leave today and take a flyer with you. Now, if anyone is interested in reaching out, also my info is there. So I really appreciate your time here today, and thank you again, everyone, for inviting me. And for anyone listening also online, please feel free to look up my information on our website at yatarisrael.org. And again, thank you everyone for listening and taking the time. I can tell you from my unit's perspective, we are every day out on the field trying to protect our country and keep our country safe. A lot of our soldiers haven't seen their families and kids in months, and we're all doing it with the ultimate goal of just keeping our country safe, beating the enemy, and also bringing back the hostages home. So thank you very much, everyone.